Hi, welcome to It Doesn't Have to Be Terrible with me, Caroline Snyder, a podcast where we explore the stories, topics, and questions that help us as individuals better understand how we impact and are impacted by the financial world around us. Welcome. Today, we're going to be diving into a question that I get pretty frequently, and I think it's a question that we all sort of wonder when we're coming up with new plans and new concerns or figuring out new concerns, and that is, should I sprint or should I go slow? I, full disclosure, have always been a sprinter, like always. Probably since birth. I like making decisions quickly, and once I make a decision, I move on that decision quickly, and I really don't look back. And that can be on a really small scale. So, for example, I would say at least a couple times a month, I put something on in the morning and I'm like, hate it, over it, and throw it in the donate bin. It can be on sort of a medium scale. So, I don't know, the mid-2010s, I started running marathons after years of saying I would never, ever run a marathon in my life. And I am pretty sure what happened is I woke up one morning and was like, I'm kind of bored. That could be interesting, and signed up for a race within the same 24 hours. And then ended up running 5 or 6 marathons. Or it could be on a pretty big scale. So I think my most classic big scale speedy decisions were around higher education. So the year my mom died, I was 25 at the time, and I was teaching high school, and I decided that staying in the classroom wasn't a good fit for me. And I'd been sort of mulling that idea for a little while, but it had been really integral to my identity, so it was hard to admit that it wasn't a good fit for me. And I I remember during a planning period researching different grad school options and being like, business school seems like a thing I could do a lot of stuff with. That seems relatively logical. And I reached out to administrators at my alma mater for my undergrad degree the same day and set up an interview to learn more. And then I applied, and it was the only place I applied. And I'm pretty sure I told the school I was working at that I was leaving before I was accepted. That would be really classic Caroline. Making a decision so quickly and forcing my own hand so that I can't go backwards. For a very long time, I thought of this decision-making process as pretty irresponsible. Mostly, I would argue, because everyone around me for many, many years told me that my decision-making process was very irresponsible. They were wrong, now I believe. But my family, both my nuclear family as well as my extended family, is just full of people who agonize over decisions. They research things to death. The number of times I remember as a child, my mother researching something so long that one of the options became obsolete. That was a common occurrence in my household. And as a kid, I just was like pretty flummoxed, right? I was like, this is not naturally how I think about decisions. I don't understand why everyone's taking so long. And then the thing that really drove me up the wall, which still does, is that so often my mom or my sister or whoever it was who was agonizing and researching and doing all this work would then not be happy with the decision they ultimately made. They'd be disappointed in some way, right? It wouldn't live up to their expectations. It wasn't perfect. I somehow missed this gene. I don't think it was something that I had a whole lot of control over as a kid. But now looking back, I'm really grateful for missing the gene in a lot of ways, because what I watched my family members go through was like, oh, no decision you make could possibly feel good after researching for that long, because nothing's going to live up to the amount of time and energy you put into that. So this is all a very long-winded way of saying, I make decisions quickly. I was told that was a bad idea. And I think it is mostly not a bad idea. And I think it's mostly not a bad idea. I'm just scrolling through my notes here. I think it is mostly not a bad idea, in part because of that, that balance, right? If you take a really long time to research and make a decision, and then the outcome is not perfect, it can feel like a big letdown. Versus, this might sound nuts, but there were things about my grad school experience I didn't think were perfect. But I also was like, I spent 2 hours figuring this out. The things that aren't perfect are okay. I have a scholarship. It felt fine, even though some of the things weren't perfect. And I understand that I am saying that from a place of immense privilege to be able to make those decisions pretty quickly. Not all people, and not myself at all times, can make those types of decisions really quickly. However, if I had spent 5 years researching schools and visiting schools and having interviews with folks, and then I was disappointed by aspects of the program, I think I would have been really crushed. Even though being disappointed is sort of part of life, right? We're never going to get everything that we want. So how does this all play into finances, right? I get these questions all the time from clients where folks are like, I am so overwhelmed, or I'm so nervous, or I just don't know what's happening, or I'm really excited about this new prospect and I just want to go, 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 go. And for a very long time in my practice, I would not let folks have sessions more frequently than every other week, because I was a really strong believer that in order to make financial decisions and financial changes in your life, you needed to go slow and steady. You needed to do the opposite of what I wanted to do. It's really actually, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, that's bizarre that I forced everyone, including myself, to do the thing that did not come most naturally to me. I should have a pen and paper while I record this of things to bring up to my therapist later. That's a good question. So, but I think that was based in reality, and it was really based in a very specific experience that I had with my own finances, where I realized that my go-to sprint pace was not going to cut it. I'll share more about the details. So in my 20s, I was a high school teacher. I loved the work. I spent over and above my means pretty much the whole time. Excuse me. And I really buried my head in this. I've talked about this in previous episodes, and I'm sure I'll talk about some of the credit card debt story again. But the point is that in order for me to successfully get out of debt, I needed to slow down. There was not going to be a silver bullet, quick answer. It wasn't like, oh, you just magically found this savings account you forgot existed and now you can just wipe out your debt. That is really what I wanted. Like, that's really what I wanted to happen. That really did not happen. There were some things that I figured out along the way that could speed up the process. But the fact of the matter was that even if I'd had a silver bullet, right? Even if I had spent money from this magical non-existent savings account to wipe out my credit card debt, my habits were such that I was going to immediately get back into credit card debt no matter what, right? Because it wasn't like, oh, there was one emergency that put you in credit card debt. It was like your whole lifestyle put you in credit card debt, Caroline. That desire to go fast didn't work for me. And what did work for me was going against truly every fiber of my being to slow down and make myself really think about the decisions I was making. And interestingly, I ended up coming to the conclusion that while I wanted to get out of credit card debt and I understood how much credit card debt costs because I had sprinted to figure that out, and I was appalled by how much it cost and I never wanted to experience that again, I also really did not want to make huge cuts to my lifestyle, which meant that I needed to make more money. Grad school, yada, 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 all these things are interconnected. So for me, what I figured out was that while those habits really needed to change, right? And changing habits is hard, and changing habits involves messing up, and changing habits is a process that needs to be refined and refined and refined and refined again, and therefore really needs to be something that is taken slow. I also simultaneously recognized that I really wanted to live the lifestyle that I was living on credit card debt. And that meant that I needed to make bigger changes in my life. I actually, now that I am saying this out loud, this is really therapeutic for me, y'all. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, oh, I think when I was deciding about grad school, it felt really good for me in that moment to be able to make a decision quickly that felt like a big, meaningful decision, because going back to grad school was going to enable me to make more money that was going to help me pay for the lifestyle I wanted, while I was like desperately frustrated simultaneously that in order to get out of credit card debt, I was having to forego things I wanted to do and buy. This all makes a lot of sense. Maybe I don't need a therapist anymore. JK, that's not true. Let's talk about like the slow first sprint, like when you rip the Band-Aid, when you sprint versus when you go slow and steady in the world of financial changes. So if we're thinking about my credit card story and saying like, for the most part, that goes in the slow and steady, that's true because it was about habit change. So whenever you are wrestling with a financial problem or trying to reach a financial goal, if it is something that is going to rest on the foundations of habitual changes, you are going to need to slow down. This means like little bite-sized chunks in order to make changes in your habits. There might be parts of that feel kind of big. So for example, one of the things that I did that was the most meaningful was I stopped carrying credit cards with me and I removed credit card information from any online store. That made me slow down. Like the person who doesn't want to slow down, it made me slow down so that I could think and take a beat and say like, are these shoes worth it? Is this meal worth it? Is this just for convenience? Or is this something that's really going to be joyful and important in my life? That habit change absolutely goes in the slow and steady wins the race pile. So do things like learning operations for your business, learning financial operations for your business, and implementing new systems. It's going to take a while to refine how that looks for you. It's going to take a while of being like, every single week, I look at the finances in this way. That's a new habit and it's going to take a while, and that's okay. Debt almost always is a slow and steady. The caveat of that is if you are in debt for something that wasn't caused by habits, then it's possible you can go fast. So for example, while in a way student loan debt is caused by the habit of going to school, it is not the same thing as being in credit card debt caused by the habit of going to Anthropology too often. It is something that you make a decision about once or twice in your life for most people. Another version of debt that would be not habitually based would be something like you had a medical emergency and now you have medical debt. That's about something that happened in singular form as opposed to a habit. So anytime we're talking about habit change, slow and steady. Anytime we're talking about getting a lot of information and then implementing something that doesn't need to rely on habits, it can be set up and then work automatically on its own or with very little input from you. That's when sprinting is so powerful. So for me, if we go back to my credit card story, I would say that the part of my debt story that was the sprint was that initial, I need more money. It's not just about getting out of debt. It's about being in a place where I'm able to live a lifestyle that I want to live. And two, the way I'm going to get out of debt now is by using the snowball method. I researched a bunch of different methods. That makes it sound like I spent a really long time. Or maybe it doesn't. It always makes me feel like I should have in some way because, again, my family indoctrinated me. But I probably took like a couple hours over the course of a week of looking into some different debt elimination options online and was like, okay, this is what feels the best. I made a decision and then I moved on. I figured out the financial piece of it of saying like, okay, I'm going to put an extra, and I don't remember anymore what it was, but like, let's say I'm going to put an extra $50 or an extra $100 onto my credit card debt every month. So I figured out what I was going to do and then I did it. The hard part was not the figuring out what I was going to do. It was the staying out of debt piece. So again, I'm just going to reiterate because I feel like I'm rambly here. The sprint piece is like download the information, implement the system, automate it. I had it set on auto pay, so I didn't even have to touch it. And then the slow and steady wins the race section is the now let's make sure that your habits are such that you don't get into this pickle again. Or if we flip it to be a more positive financial goal of let's instead talk about saving, right? Which is basically when you're getting out of debt, you're paying for past purchases. When you're saving, you are paying for future purchases. So if you're saving, the same thing would be true. Here's my sprint. What am I saving for? How much do I need? What is a way to automate that? And then the slow and steady wins the race piece of it is, what are the habits that I need to put into place in order to support that larger goal? I think that for the vast majority of us, there is a version that feels more comfortable, right? I'm more comfortable with sprinting. Most of my family is more comfortable with slow and steady wins the race. That means that those people in my family are really good at chipping away at hard things in a way that feels like foreign to me. I'm jealous about them for that, right? Like sticking to it, that like stick-to-itiveness. They're very good at that. And people who are good at the slow and steady wins the race tend to be good at saving. They tend to be good at things that take like incremental change, versus those of us in the sprint bucket tend to be really good at moving things really quickly, starting a new business, getting all those ducks in a row, implementing a new system. Those are things that you don't have to spend so much time over the course of a longer period working on. I think that's actually really good that most of us have a version that feels more comfortable, because most people, pausing for an airplane. We have a base not very far from us and it's noisy. Actually, it's kind of far from us. It's just that they fly and they're noisy. Silly airplanes. Okay. That ability to lean into what feels most comfortable for you can be really helpful, because we all have seasons in life where that slow and steady is going to be the thing that's going to really help, or that sprint is going to be the thing that's going to really help, or there are parts of a question or a goal that lends itself better to one side or the other. And if you think of yourself in terms of, am I a hare or a turtle or a tortoise? What is the story? The hare and the tortoise. Okay, great. That means that you can identify like, great, I'm going to be good at this thing, and maybe I don't need as much outside support on this side because I can do this part really well on my own, versus this is the part that I need help with, and I'm going to figure out what kind of external support is going to help me do that. I think that's kind of beautiful to be able to lean in and understand. I need help with accountability on things that are going to take me a long time all the time. And I know that about myself, whether it's financial or not. And therefore, I gather accountability buddies to help me stay on track. I'll keep picking on my sister because she's, my big sister. It's just who you pick on. She is wonderful at staying accountable to herself over the long term, but really struggles with making decisions. So she needs accountability and support to make that decision in the first place. By knowing where we lie on the spectrum, we're better able to kill it in the spot that we know how and get help where we don't know how to do it all by ourselves. And that's cool. We're human beings. That's why there's multiple of us to work together, right? If we were putting this in financial coaching terms, I think lots of financial coaches do something similar to me. I have what I call sprint days, which are 3-hour intensives. And then I also have monthly coaching, which is 1 hour, either once or twice a month systems. And for some folks, depending on their questions, right, like, I need to figure out how to start this business and hit the ground running. That's a sprint. I need to figure out how to make sure my retirement accounts are all set up and my benefits are all set up. That's a sprint. I need to figure out how to get out of debt. I need to figure out how to become a better saver. Those are monthly coaching. And for some people, we do sprint up front and then monthly coaching on the back end, which is really what would have been the best for my debt situation. At the time, I did not know financial coaches existed. I had no idea that was a profession. I probably wouldn't have wanted one because I would have been like, I can do this myself. And I did. It just took a while. And it took some fails along the way. But combining both helps. So if you are in a place where you are trying to reach a financial goal or you're trying to change some of your habits around money, I would encourage you to take a few minutes and think about what feels best for you. Like, what is your go-to? Is it the hare? Is it the sprint? Or is it the tortoise? Is it the slow and steady? And then based on that answer, think about, okay, cool. So if this is my goal, if my goal is to save $10,000, what part of that goal is going to be something that is relatively easy for me? And what part is going to be hard? And therefore, where might I need some help from a friend or from a professional? Thank you so much for listening. I'm sort of embarrassed for family members to listen to this because they're probably going to be like, oh, Caroline, still being irresponsible. I don't know. It's, that family baggage is tough. And it's really tough when it comes to money, even when you work with it for a living. So if you're feeling uncomfortable on that, you are absolutely not alone. Have a lovely rest of your week. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Always feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns or feedback. I'd love to take it all. And if you're curious about financial coaching, please reach out to me at caroline@verityadvising.com, or you can go to our website and the link is in the description. Thank you. Bye. And these quick decisions, I have to say, I've really never regret them. There is one jumpsuit, which for those of you who follow me or have followed me for a while, you will know I have a real soft spot for jumpsuits. Anyway, there's this one jumpsuit, it was blue and white, that I donated, I don't know, like 15 years ago, and I still think about it pretty regularly, which is silly because now that I'm thinking about it, the reason I donated it was because I needed to wear this like very uncomfortable bra in order to make the jumpsuit work, and I don't enjoy wearing uncomfortable clothes, so I never wore it, so I donated it. Okay, I don't regret this decision. I'm glad we've talked this out. I've never regretted one of these fast decisions, is what I've just decided. Great. Thanks, friends.